The world's gone crazy, nothing makes sense. Chips costing bucks a bag, you can't pay your rent. The border's wide open, white people are bad. Trainer's trying to teach your kids and everybody's mad.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Dave. We were talking about an ideal presidential platform, an honest presidential platform, and all the pain that would come along with that presidential platform.
You almost have my vote now, by the way.
Thank you. We would, constitutional amendments, executive orders, 10-point plans, going after it all. I think we left off talking about mental health. And I compared it to what happened in El Salvador, where there was no real criminal justice system. So the new guy built one, imprisoned all these violent repeat offenders, and they became a much, much safer nation. And he won re-election in a landslide. When you look at America, I think we need a similar program for mental health. We need to rapidly build big institutions where we can help people get mentally clear. There's obviously a lot. We divested big time from mental health care in the 90s. Mm-hmm. It shows. There's nowhere for a lot of people who can't see the world as clear as you need to be able to be productive. There's nowhere for them to go. And there needs to be a federal program. And I think through the federal program for mental health and health in general, going back to, for example, our diet and our exercise and things that go along with it, we cure a lot of our other stuff, I'm pretty sure.
How do you make sure that something like that isn't abused? Who defines what is healthy?
You've got to nail that language on the constitutional amendment. You've absolutely got to have it's a federal program with local control in an oversight committee that you somehow can trust. Well, okay. The best way I can think of to make that happen. Remember when I said in the last episode that you need to break up the CIA? The CIA, you break up the DOJ and the FBI.
Yep.
If you concurrently break up the media monopoly, get all of the intelligence agency journalists out of their jobs. And if they were, by the way, bring them all into court, make them all swear whether they work for the CIA or one of the other intelligence agencies or not. If you find out they're lying, put them in the super jail. If they admit it, take it from there. So let's clear out the media outlets with the most haste. And that means getting all these plants out of our media system. That also means breaking up the monopolies that own the media outlets. So before Reagan and eventually Clinton, let it happen. Let the world evolve. The United States law evolve to where you could own more than one radio station in a marketplace. You could own more than one news marketplace. We have to go back to that. So we've got to get the plants out of the media, and then we've got to break up all of the super media companies. We've got to return control of newspapers online, in print, if that's still a thing. We've got to give that back to the states. Inside the states, we've got to give that back to the communities. We've got to really put some strong language into the anti-monopoly foundation for how we absorb news. So if you've got that, and you've actually got an editor that lives in your community that is a forthright person, then all of a sudden things like what you're talking about with a mental health overview review. If I said, hey, Dave, we're going to do this mental health thing where we're going to build significant facilities to help these people get better. And you're like, Steve, that's what the Germans did. They're going to take people they deem mentally unhealthy.
Yeah, that's right. That was my argument. Yep.
It's valid, because you can only imagine that kind of thing being put in place with the corrupt society we live in today. Mm-hmm. You can't imagine that when there was there's a local editor in your community who writes a local newspaper, and he's got power. And the power to put somebody into one of these facilities sits locally. So the editors locally, the media outlets locally, like it used to be, with all this independent ownership and people like George Soros 1,000 miles away, hopefully him locked up in leg irons in a dark room somewhere. But there's no way they could get control of these new facilities we have to build to go make our society better. Then you don't necessarily look at it and be so maybe afraid of what they could do with it. What do you think about that?
How did we get so far away from journalistic integrity? Somebody's got to ask these people like where their journalistic integrity went. I wanted to be a journalist when I was a kid. I wanted with all my heart to be a wartime journalist and, go to crazy places, have adventures and stuff like that. And today, it seems like it's repeating the same nonsense over and over and over again. I think it's great. I don't know, you have to get 38 out of 50 states. So 75% of the states have to agree on a constitutional amendment. So I'm wondering how, with the current media monopoly that we have today and the way the media controls how people think, and we're starting to even get to thought police from a legislative perspective today. You've got this January 6th thing going on where nonviolent participants in this process have been jailed. I love the optimism by saying we can do this, but I just wonder, where do you start on something like that?
Oh,
Where
I
would you
don't know.
start?
I don't know if we can do any of this.
Okay.
This is all
Theoretical.
What if
Yeah.
you were running for president?
Yeah.
You wanted to get things to a point where the world didn't seem insane. Insane. In the United States, where we have a pretty good grasp on how it works here.
Yep.
We know that we've got to do the things that we already laid out. We've got to do those things.
Yeah.
Reboot in so many ways, and there's so much corruption at every level that it's Herculean to even think about it. But you and I were talking about crime in the United States, and when you hear from people overseas, and you're in again, you're in Europe somewhere, they can't believe how much crime we have. They just can't believe it, and so they want to know if it's true. They'll say, "Hey, is there really that many murders every weekend in Chicago? Is there really gangs of people that come by and smash and grab and take all this stuff out and then get caught and don't go to jail?" And I have to tell them, yeah, it's true. There are many murders every weekend on the south side of Chicago. The reason it's not stopped is because the murders aren't on the north side of Chicago. That's why it happens. So I was looking online. There's a group called Data Pandas. They do a good job of building data sets.
Okay.
They create this index ranking that is crime rate by country, but then they break it down quite a bit and let you understand why things are so dangerous. So the most dangerous country in the world is Venezuela. There's 170, 180 countries in this list, and Venezuela is number one. And they're number one pretty substantially. And they're followed by Papua New Guinea and South Africa and Afghanistan. And
this is a really interesting list.
Yeah, it's a really interesting list. And it's true when you look at it. The heat index we have on datapandas.org is pretty cool. Venezuela is 83.76. They're the most dangerous country on the planet. But interestingly enough, the United States is 56th. United States is right between Nicaragua and the Ukraine for crime. And when you get to the bottom of the list, the countries that have little to no crime, it's the countries we've been talking about the last several episodes, right? The UAE is the lowest, in Taiwan, and Switzerland is 131, and Hong Kong's 130, and Japan's 129, and I can go right down the list, but it's all the countries we talk about. They don't have crime. And so I'm going to read this directly from a screen in front of me right now, which I normally don't hear.
Yep.
Despite being one of the world's most developed countries, the U.S. ranks 52nd with a crime index of 47.81. This high index in an advanced nation like the U.S. underscores the fact that crime is not merely a problem of underdeveloped or developing countries, but a universal challenge. So go back to that reality check we need to have with the Americans. And if we did a poll and we called 100 people in the wealthy suburbs of America and said, hey, how big of a problem is crime? How would that score? And how would the score today be different than it was, say, 10, 20 years ago? What do you think? In the wealthy areas, I don't know.
I think more and more people are waking up to the fact that we've got crime that's starting to touch the suburbs now. I think our weakness on law enforcement has hurt the United States. But I still think there are people that where it hasn't touched them, that are still living in a fantasy world, thinking that everything's okay.
Yeah, I think right now people see the headlines and they're numb to it. But
Yeah.
now you're seeing people get punched for no reason, right?
Yeah.
They're getting cleaned out, man. They're walking down the street. And let me plug this in real quick. Thought I had it plugged in, I don't.
What I am starting to see in downtown Seattle, Seattle's been such a liberal bastion for so long, and there's been the sanctuary city mentality. I am seeing a lot of the people that I know that are very soft on homelessness and soft on drugs, that are saying that it's dangerous to go downtown Seattle, and they're keeping their families out of Seattle now. So I am seeing a lot of that.
My neighborhood is filled with people who have left California and New York that have come to move to Tennessee because they know it's a lot safer here, and they've seen the violence for themselves up close. So you're starting to see it everywhere, right? And
yeah,
so
absolutely. Yep.
A real thing.
Yep.
And I think, and if you look at the last election, you look at what Antifa did, and you look at the fact that they were celebrated by the people in government and not prosecuted like they should have been.
Yep.
They're also seeing that something really is wrong with the way we're going after crime in this country. So it's a broken system, and it's the same people doing most of the stuff, and we're just not built with any kind of federal laws to stop this from happening in a way. So go back to, again, you need a constitutional amendment. You need a few of them. Again, you need a new Bill of Rights. In the constitutional amendment, one of them has to say, when you commit a violent crime, you take away the civil rights of others, therefore you're going to lose some of yours. At that point, you've got them. At that point, if you now identify repeat violent offender as, he's got the scarlet letter, we now know we can treat him differently or her differently and get them out of our society. And think about it. Think about how much better we would be. These people that are walking down the street in New York City and just punching people in the face or from the back of the head, these gangs of people that are jumping up on white people in particular and throwing them to the ground and beating them till they're either dead or you're dead.
Yep.
That stuff just stops. All right, because those are repeat offenders. They've had a list, all of them, and they're not in society anymore. They've broken a constitutional law, and they've been removed. And like I said, they're hanging out in North Dakota in a prison camp on federal land somewhere. And you've taken that away from the states, because now you've got a repeat offender. You no longer belong to the states. You belong to the federal government.
Yep.
It's not, you can't have California, New York going, wait, we're not going to honor this. Oh, you're going to honor this. This is the Constitution. And we're taking these repeat offenders out, and they're going to go live in a very unhappy place for a while. I mean, not for a while, maybe for a while, maybe for life. We can't trust them. So you can stop crime. The police do their job. They catch these people over and over and over again. We just let them go.
I think it is positive that you are seeing people like Eric Adams. Arguably, he is a moderate. He's definitely a moderate Democrat. But there are some things where he leans a little more right than some. But you have him recognizing that the immigrant issue in New York is not sustainable. You have him as an ex-law enforcement officer, understanding that we need better policing. So I do have some hope in areas like that smart people on both sides of the aisle are starting to really understand that it's an issue. I don't know. I think there's just enough wackos that think that we shouldn't support our law enforcement officers. However, and there's still enough leftover hangover from the BLM stuff that people, you've got a lot of people that are afraid to address that because you're labeled as a racist if you have a problem with the way that people have handled the police, the idea of law enforcement, and the fact that if you support the police, you have in many respects been labeled racist. Now, people that this has touched, you know, a lot of city dwellers that I know, again, in Seattle, LA, New York, are recognizing that it's not safe to ride the subway anymore. It's not safe to ride the L in Chicago all the time, the way it used to. Remember when we were in Chicago, we'd ride the L all the time, no problem. And it's not safe anymore, and people are recognizing that, and so that does give me hope that people on both sides of the L are starting to wake up to this stuff.
The government, a government website out there called ojp.gov, they have an abstract where they talk about the homicide rates in the US are 11 per 100,000 people, and Europe's are 2 per 100,000.
Wow.
The rape rates in the US are 7 times higher than Europe.
Holy smoke.
Robbery rates are 4 times higher. Theft and auto are twice as high. There's no scenario where we're not higher. And I love the establishment wonks that will come out and say, well, that's because we prosecute more, we catch more, we do this, we report more. It's all bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It's way more dangerous in the United States than it is in Europe. It just is. And then keep going. I would love to compare these to Japan. You know, I haven't done that, but I can tell you it's, you got to have a murder for it to have a percentage when you're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, Japan's got very, very little of that stuff.
Very low.
Guess where you don't fuck around? In the UAE for a different reason.
That's right. That's right.
The Japanese do it for a cultural reason. They're not violent. In the UAE,
get your hand chopped off, or
they will catch you and you will be tortured and you will be eliminated. So they don't have any crime. They just don't. And everybody, when you know, if they're working in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, you know, they're like, listen, it's a great place to live. It's the middle class is thriving. There's no income taxes. It's just really a great place to live. Don't commit a crime here. You know, you won't like what happens to you. Same in Singapore. You will not like being on the other side of the fence if you commit a crime. I think that's great because guess what? I don't do. I don't commit crimes.
Yep.
I would never attack somebody and not think that I don't have to pay the consequences.
Yeah.
It's outrageous to me that you think you can just come up and punch somebody for no reason and know you're going to get out the next day because we let a guy like George Soros come in and with his money that he made off the misery of people by shorting a market that he was very happy it happened on. You got a guy like Soros come in and fund all of these anti-American attorney generals and, you know, all the unrest, most of the unrest we're dealing with right now, from what happened in St. Louis to what's currently going on in New York, is because of that guy.
Capital crime should be punished with capital punishment. That, you know, that's where that Judeo-Christian concept of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, like that's, I think we need to punish things that way. And you're right. People that don't have to worry about these, you know, people are concerned about capital crime, capital punishment. Now there is a section of society that has been, you know, there are people that are unjustly accused and unjustly convicted. And that, you know, that's the thing where I think, I mean, it makes me scratch my head and think about it. And I think that's, you know, there are a certain number of wrong place, wrong time. And that would be my concern with implementing something like this, is how do you protect against someone being convicted of a crime that they didn't commit?
So I think it's a good question. It's the question that will come up the most.
Yeah.
Repeat violent offenders. So if you take someone who's a violent offender, in my world, in my book, so I would recreate the prison system. I would tear the whole thing down, which doesn't mean tearing down buildings. They're all very usable. But you tear the whole thing down and rebuild it. We have 2 types of crime in the United States in my new world. One is nonviolent, one is violent. The nonviolent offenders go to a different type of system that focuses on rehabilitation. So if you're a shoplifter, if you're a white collar criminal, to a certain degree, I mean, making sure you didn't take enough, so much that you really hurt people, but you get treated differently after your conviction. Our hope is we can rehabilitate you and make you a productive member of society. So you don't take a shoplifter and put him in jail with a murderer in my system. Yeah. So on the other side, now the violent offenders, there's 2 classes. There's violent offender 1 and you're violent offender 2. Violent offender 1, you go to the blue prisons. The blue prisons are for violent offender 1s. We're going to work on rehabilitation because we don't know if you're going to do this again.
Mhm.
If you were in the wrong, like you just said, in the wrong
It's
place.
it's a crime of passion, wrong place, wrong time, whatever, whatever. Yep.
You're involuntary manslaughter. You wish it didn't happen. Something happened. We hope we can get you back out of there. But if you get convicted of a violent crime again, we're going to have to assume you did it. Because I personally, in my sheltered world, don't know anybody in my entire life that's convicted of a violent crime 2 times. I do know some people that got convicted of a violent crime 1 time and went to jail.
Mhm.
I don't know anybody that's done it twice. That shows you I've never lived in certain neighborhoods, but that's the truth for me. So I think if you get a chance, it's like the people that get multiple DUIs, you're an idiot.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, after the first one, either stop drinking, which is the right answer,
Yep.
or don't drive, or get somebody to drive you around. Figure it out. Well, it's not fair. I don't have money. Yes, stop drinking. Okay, stop drinking. So,
Well, stop drinking. You might have some money.
yeah, you might have some money, right?
Yeah.
But on the violent side, you've committed a second crime, been convicted by a jury, your peers a second time. The executive maneuver that happens then is you are now permanently branded a violent repeat offender. We trust the system to get it right when it happens twice. And I say maybe 3 times, but I don't think so. What are you going to do? Nearly kill somebody once and then let them out and do it again, then let them out and do it again and get them on the 3rd time? No.
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
No.
doesn't make any sense.
So they go to the red prisons. All right. You're in the red prisons. You don't want to be in the red prisons, man. By being a violent offender twice, you've taken away the rights of others, and now we've taken away yours, and you're getting treated like those prisoners. Go up, bring up a video in your spare time, listeners, and go watch how the repeat offenders in El Salvador are being treated right now. They're chained together many, many hours out of the day. It looks inhumane, but all you have to do is remember what they've done to people. Yeah. And so drop them off, like I said, in the prison camp and be done with it.
You've lost your right to be human. When you act inhuman, you've traded your humanity for that, and you deserve to be treated that way.
And that's my executive overview of looking at how. So if you look at the things that trouble America, we just talked about crime, and you could go super granular. I studied criminal justice at Wayne State when I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and man, really had a different outlook of viewpoint of the world back then. I had a criminal justice CRJ 572 with Judge Damon Keith from the Detroit bench. He was our instructor at night. He was awesome. And we talked about things like recidivism back then. And this is 1985, 6, something like that. And he said, recidivism is the biggest problem. It's the same people doing the same stuff all the time. Well, here we are all these years later. It's still the same people doing the same stuff. So when you're an executive and you look at this thing and come in, you go, I can fix it. Like I just said, nonviolent offenders, you go over to the left. We'll take care of you a different way. Violent offenders, the ones we're worried about the most, you get one chance to be rehabilitated unless it was something like murder or attempted murder or something, or sure you jump right to the red school or the red prison. The other guys, man, you're removed. So when you step back and you're doing a review of what you've done in office, you've literally drastically reduced violent crime during your term in office.
You've made America's cities safer. You've changed the outlook that the world has on America quickly. You've also scared. I mean, there's a reason why people don't litter in Singapore and why they don't smuggle drugs into Singapore, because they're very severe. They're very severe on that crime. They've proven that they'll follow through on it. There's a special kind of hell reserved for pedophiles and rapists, Steve. One thing, can you tell that story on what from that criminal justice class, what they said about pedophiles when they went into the prison system?
Yeah, it was eye-opening. That was before I had my own kids, and I understand it now. But they were talking about, we went and visited Jackson State Prison, and we talked to the warden, guards, administrators, and various level of inmates. We talked to them all. We got a chance to interview them over 2 days. And you find that the one thing, they don't have much in common, all right? They just don't. They don't like each other, most of them. But you find they've got one thing in common. They love their kids. They miss their families dearly, the prisoners, and they love their kids. So when a pedophile, they used to call them tree jumpers, and I do not remember why, but I know they called them tree jumpers. And when a tree jumper came into the prison,
So, hey, Steve, one more thing. We were talking about your criminal justice class, and one thing that I thought was interesting was the way they talked about the handling of pedophilia or pedophiles in jail today. And I think there's some poetic justice to that in the prison system. What happened when you went to go visit those prisons?
So we went to Jackson State Prison for a couple of days. We got a chance to interview the warden and guards and inmates and administrators and, you know, all kinds of people. And they don't have that much in common. I mean, they don't like each other. It's a horrible place, but they do have one thing in common. They all, and this is before I had kids, so I didn't understand it. They all have kids. A lot of them have kids, most of them. And they bond over that a little bit, right? So you can be a murderer in Jackson State Prison and you might get along great with the guard. I swear to God, that's how it really works. They don't really judge you too harshly on some of the crimes you committed. You know, maybe there was a reason, maybe there wasn't. But man, when you were a pedophile, you were a child molester of some kind, no way. They would, and I know they would now today put you in supposedly protective custody, perhaps, and whatever. But when I went into those prisons to go talk to people, not a chance. A pedophile would get put into a cell, and maybe that guard wouldn't quite close that cell door tightly at night, and the other guard would look the other way. Administrators maybe didn't hear the complaint the next day, and everything happened to basically make that pedophile wish he was dead while he was in Jackson State Prison. They had their own version of community justice in one of the biggest penitentiaries in the United States, and I don't know anybody in that whole penitentiary that had a problem with it, including me. Even as a kid, somebody who didn't have kids and was 21 years old from college going in there, I said, shit, these are child molesters.
Yeah.
Who cares what happens to them?
Yep.
And I stand by that. I feel the exact same way today.
I think that's part of where your red prisons might serve some of its own purpose, is having some of the worst of the people maybe policed by their own kind or something.
Lord of the Flies, man. Lord of the Flies prison style. Who cares?
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, so I think there's lots more to talk about with crime and justice, but it's probably a good place to end this episode since we're at time. Thanks everybody for listening.
See you next time.
Kids and everybody's mad.